My panacea, if you will allow this term, is simply free competition in the business of government. Everyone has the right to look after his own welfare as he sees it and to obtain security under his own conditions. On the other hand, this means progress through contests between governments forced to compete for followers. True worldwide liberty is that which is not forced upon anyone, being to each just what he wants of it. It neither suppresses nor deceives, and is always subject to a right of appeal. To bring about such a liberty, there would be no need to give up either national traditions or family ties, no need to learn to think in a new language, no need at all to cross rivers or seas, carrying the bones of one's ancestors. It is simply a matter of declaration before one's local political commission, for one to move from republic to monarchy, from representative government to autocracy, from oligarchy to democracy, or even to Mr. Proudhon's anarchy, without even the necessity of removing one's dressing gown or slippers. Are you tired of the agitation in the forum, the hair-splitting of the parliamentary tribune, or the rude kisses of the goddess of freedom? Are you so fed up with liberalism and clericalism as to sometimes confuse Mr. de Mortier with Mr. de Frey, to forget the exact difference between Mr. Rogier and Mr. de Decker? Would you like the stability, the soft comfort, of an honest despotism? Do you feel the need for a government which thinks for you, acts for you, sees everything and has a hand everywhere, and plays the role of deputy providence as all governments like to do? You do not have to migrate south like the swallows in autumn or geese in November. All you desire is here, there, everywhere. Enter your name and take your place. What is most admirable about this innovation is that it does away, forever, with revolutions, mutinies, and street fighting, down to the last tensions in the political tissue. Are you dissatisfied with your government? Change over to another. These 4 words, always associated with horror and bloodshed, words which all courts, high and low, military and special, without exception, unanimously find guilty of inciting to rebellion. These 4 words become innocent, as if in the mouths of seminarists, and as harmless as the medicine so wrongly mistrusted by Mr. de Pourceaugnac. Change over to another means. Go to the Bureau for Political Membership, cap in hand, and ask politely for your name to be transferred to any list you please. The commissioner will put on his glasses, open the register, enter your decision, and give you a receipt. You take your leave, and the revolution is accomplished without spilling any more than a drop of ink. As it affects you alone, I cannot disagree with it. Your change affects no one else. That is its merit. It does not involve a victorious majority or a defeated minority, but nothing will prevent 4.6 million Belgians from following your example if they wish. I ask one thing only: freedom of choice. In a nutshell, freedom of choice, competition, laissez-faire, laissez-passer. This marvelous motto, inscribed on the banner of economic science, will one day be the principle of the political world too. So, free competition in the business of government as in all other cases. Imagine, after your initial surprise, the picture of a country exposed to governmental competition. That is to say, simultaneously possessing as many irregularly competing governments as have ever been conceived and will ever be invented.
Yes, indeed. That will be a fine mess. Do you suppose we could extricate ourselves from such a confusion?
Very much so, and nothing is simpler to grasp if only one applies oneself to it a little. Do you remember the times when people shouted religious opinions more loudly than anyone ever shouted political arguments? When the divine creator became the Lord of hosts, the avenging and pitiless God in whose name blood flowed in rivers. Men have always tried to take the divine cause into their own hands, to make him an accomplice of their own bloodthirsty passions. The religions, in whose names were set up stakes and instruments of torture, survive and live together peacefully, under the same laws, eating from the same budget, and if each sect preaches only its own excellence, it is quite rare that it persists in condemning its rivals. Then, what has become possible in this obscure, unfathomable region of the conscience, with the proselytism of some, the intolerance of others, the fanaticism and ignorance of the masses? What is possible to the extent that it is practiced in half the world without resulting in unrest or violence? On the contrary, particularly where there are divergent creeds, numerous sects exist on a footing of complete legal equality, and people are, in fact, more circumspect and careful of their moral purity and dignity than anywhere else. Could not this, which has become possible under such difficult conditions, be all the more possible in the purely secular domain of politics, where the whole science can be expressed in 4 words. Under the present conditions, a government exists only by the exclusion of all the others, and one party can rule only after smashing its opponents. A majority is always harassed by a minority which is impatient to govern. Under such conditions, it is quite inevitable that the parties hate each other and live, if not at war, at least in a state of armed peace. Who is surprised to see that minorities intrigue and agitate, and that governments put down by force any aspiration to a different political form which would be similarly exclusive? So society ends up composed of ambitious resentful men, waiting for vengeance, and ambitious power-sated men, sitting complacently on the edge of a precipice. Erroneous principles never bring about just consequences, and coercion never leads to right or truth. Then imagine that all compulsion ceases, that every adult citizen is, and remains, free to select from among the possible offered governments the one which conforms to his will and satisfies his personal needs. Free not only on the day following some bloody revolution, but always, everywhere. Free to select, but not to force his choice on others. At that point all disorder comes to an end, all fruitless struggle becomes impossible.
Amen. Allow me, however, one small objection. When all possible types of government have been tried everywhere publicly and under free competition, what will be the result? One form is sure to be recognized as the best, and thus finally everyone will choose it. This would lead us back to having one government for all, which is just where we began.
Not so fast, please. You freely admit that all would then be in harmony, and you call this going back to where we began? Your objection gives support to my fundamental principle, insofar as it expects this universal agreement to be established by the simple expedient of laissez-faire, laissez-passer. I could seize this opportunity to declare you convinced, converted to my system, but I am not interested in half convictions and I am not looking for converts. No, we would not revert to having a single form of government, unless perhaps in the far distant future when governmental activities will be reduced by common consent to the simplest form. We are not there yet, not anywhere near it. It is obvious that men are neither of the same opinion or moral attitude, nor as easily reconciled as you suppose. The rule of free competition is therefore the only possible one. One man needs excitement and struggle, quietness would be deadly to him. Another, a dreamer and philosopher, is aware of the movements of society from a distance. His thoughts are formed only in the most profound peace. One, poor, thoughtful, an unknown artist, needs encouragement and support to create his immortal work, a laboratory for his experiments, a block of marble to sculpt angels. Another, a forceful and impulsive genius, endures no fetters and breaks the arm that would guide him. For one, a republic is satisfactory, with its dedication and self-denial. For another, an absolute monarchy, with its pomp and splendor. One, an orator, would like a parliament. Another, incapable of speaking 10 connected words, would have nothing to do with such babblers. There are strong spirits and weak minds, some with insatiable ambitions, and some who are humble, happy with the small share which befalls them. Finally, there are as many needs as different personalities. How could all these be reconciled by a single form of government? Clearly, people would accept it only in varying degrees. Some would be content, some indifferent, some would find faults, some would be openly dissatisfied, some would even conspire against it. Whatever happens, you can count on human nature to ensure that the number satisfied would be smaller than the number of dissenters. However perfect a government might be it absolutely perfect, there will always be opponents. The people whose natures are imperfect, to whom all perfection is incomprehensible, even disagreeable. In my system, the most extreme dissatisfaction would merely be similar to the marital dispute, with divorce as its final solution. However, under the reign of competition, which government would allow itself to be overtaken by the others in the race for progress? What improvements available to one's happy neighbor would one refuse to introduce in one's own house? Such constant competition would work wonders. In fact, subjects would become models of perfection too, since they would be free to come and go, to speak or be silent, to act or to leave things alone. They would have only themselves to blame if they were not completely happy. From now on, instead of fomenting dissent in order to gain attention, they will satisfy their vanity by assuring themselves and persuading others that their own government is the most perfect imaginable. Thus, between rulers and ruled a friendly understanding will grow up, a mutual trust and simplicity of relationships easily conceivable.
What? Despite being wide awake, you seriously dream of complete harmony between parties and political movements? You expect them to live side by side in the same territory without tensions? Without the stronger seeking to subdue and annex the weaker? You imagine that this great Tower of Babel will produce a universal language?
I believe in a universal language, just as I believe in the supreme power of freedom to bring about world peace. I can predict neither the hour nor the day of this universal agreement. My idea is merely a seed in the wind. Will it fall on fertile ground or on the cobbled road? I can have no say in this. I propose nothing. Everything is just a matter of time. Who, a century ago, believed in freedom of conscience, and who, these days, would dare question it? Is it so very long since people scoffed at the idea of the press being a power within the state, yet now statesmen too bow before it? Did you foresee this new force of public opinion, whose birth we have all witnessed, which, although still in its infancy, imposes its verdict on empires? It is of utmost importance even in the decisions of despots. Would you not have laughed in the face of anyone daring to predict its rise?
Perhaps. And what about the existing dynasties, the prevailing majorities, the established institutions and accredited theories? Do you believe that they would retreat and quietly line up under the banner of laissez-faire, laissez-passer?
Tell me first of all if you really think they would be so confident of themselves to be able always to afford to refuse large concessions. I myself would not overthrow anybody. All governments exist through some kind of innate power which they more or less skillfully use to survive. From now on they have an assured place in my system. I do not deny that at first they may lose a considerable number of their less willing followers, but without considering the chances of it coming about, what wonderful compensations result from the security and stability of power. Less subjects, in other words, less taxpayers, but in compensation they will have complete submission, voluntary. Moreover, for the whole term of the contract, no more compulsion, fewer security officers, hardly any police, some soldiers, but only for the sake of parades, therefore only the beautiful ones. Expenses will decrease faster than any decrease in incomes, no more loans and no more financial difficulties. What has so far been seen only in the New World will become reality, economic systems which at least could make happy human beings. What dynasty would not like to inscribe its name for the eternal future in such a way? What majority would not agree to let the minority emigrate en masse? At last you see how a system, based on the great economic principle of laissez-faire, can deal with all the difficulties. Truth is not only a half-truth but the whole truth, neither more nor less. Today we have ruling dynasties as well as fallen ones, princes wearing a crown and others who certainly would not mind a chance of wearing one. Each has his party, and each party is primarily interested in putting spokes in the wheels of the coach of the state, until they have tipped it up, thus gaining the chance of climbing into it themselves, risking the same fate in turn. It is the charming game of seesaw, which people pay the price for and yet never seem to tire of. As Paul Louis Courier used to say, in our system there will be no more expensive balancing acts or catastrophic downfalls, no more conspiracies or usurpations. Everybody is legitimate and nobody, one remains legitimate without objection as long as one is accepted, and for one's supporters alone. Apart from this, there will be neither divine nor secular rights, no right except that to change, to perfect one's program and to make fresh appeals to one's followers. No exiles, banishments, confiscations, persecutions of any kind. A government, unable to meet the demands of its creditors, may leave its palace with head held high, if it has been honest, its bookkeeping is in order, and its statutes, constitutional or otherwise, have been faithfully upheld. The rulers may retire to the country and write their self-justifying memoirs. Under different circumstances, when ideas have changed, a deficiency is felt in the collective arrangements. A particular thing is lacking. There is idle capital and discontented shareholders are looking elsewhere for investments. Then one launches one's program, quickly recruits members, and when one thinks one is strong enough, instead of descending into the streets, as in the language of the riot, one goes to the Bureau for Political Membership. One hands in one's declaration supported by a list of basic statutes and a register for members to enter their names. Then one has a new government. The rest are internal problems, management affairs about which only the members need worry. Are you not surprised by the simplicity of this apparatus? This powerful machinery which even a child could handle, which nevertheless would satisfy all needs, search, scrutinize, test, and analyze it. I defy you to find fault with it in any particular. Furthermore, I am convinced that no one will bother with it. Such is human nature. It is this conviction, in fact, which induced me to publish my idea. Indeed, if I do not find followers, this is nothing but an intellectual exercise, and no existing power, no majority, no organization, in short, nobody, however mighty, has any right to bad feelings towards me.
And if, just by chance, you had converted me,
you might compromise me.
PANGEA is BitNation's decentralized jurisdiction platform. Using PANGEA, you can build voluntary nations, agree contracts, and resolve disputes with other citizens, and access the services you need. This is our vision of jurisdiction as a service, a global market for governance services. Imagine a world where people can freely choose which voluntary nations and jurisdictions they want to be part of. A world where voluntary nations offer a choice of services under their own laws and policies and compete for citizens in a free market that rewards good governance. You too can be part of the future of governance. Welcome to the Internet of Sovereignty. Welcome to PANGEA.